This is Max and Mia podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Max and Mia podcast.
Hi everyone, great to have you here with us again.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We've got something special for you today. This episode is going to be a bit more challenging than usual.
That's right. If you're ready for a challenge, or you're already at a more advanced level, this one's for you.
We're diving into real everyday conversations with slang, idioms, and vocabulary that native speakers actually use all the time.
Not your typical textbook English. We're talking about the real deal you hear in movies, TV shows, and actual conversations.
And the best part? We're not doing this alone. We have two familiar faces from the channel joining us for the entire episode.
We're super excited to have them here. So, without further ado,
let's welcome our special guests, Matthew and Rachel.
Hey, thanks for having us, guys.
Yeah, really excited to be here. Hi, everyone.
So, Rachel, should we tell them what we've got planned for today?
Absolutely. We're going to walk you through some authentic conversations, the kind you'd actually hear between native speakers in everyday life.
Right. We've picked some really interesting topics that people discuss all the time, but they do require a certain level of English to really engage with.
And we'll break down the slang, the idioms, and those expressions that can trip up even advanced learners.
Oh, by the way, Rachel, do you know how you'd say many happy returns in Spanish?
I think it's something like que cumplas muchos más, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was curious about that because I was at a birthday party yesterday and someone said it, and I thought, I wonder how that translates.
That's actually pretty interesting. It's one of those phrases that sounds so formal in English, but it's just a nice way to wish someone well on their birthday.
Right? Language is wild sometimes.
Anyway, let's dive into our first conversation.
Yes. So this first one is a discussion about gentrification. Pretty hot topic these days.
Yeah, people have really strong opinions about this. You'll hear two friends talking about rising costs in their neighborhood, different perspectives, some pro, some against.
And there's some really useful vocabulary in here. Plus, they use mixed conditionals, which can be tricky to master.
This is definitely the kind of conversation you'd only be able to have if you've got a solid grasp of English.
All right, let's listen to it.
So, have you noticed how different the neighborhood's been looking lately?
Oh my God, yes. I was just talking about this with my roommate. It's like every time I walk down the street, there's a new coffee shop or some boutique that wasn't there before.
Right? And don't even get me started on the rent increases. My lease is up in 2 months, and I'm honestly dreading what they're going to ask for.
I know, it's insane. My building raised rent by almost 20% this year. 20%! Like, where am I supposed to come up with that kind of money?
That's rough. But I mean, I don't know. Part of me gets why it's happening. The area's gotten way safer. There's better public transit now, and honestly, it's just nicer to live here than it was 5 years ago.
Sure, but at what cost? All my favorite spots are closing down because they can't afford the rent either. That taco place on the corner? Gone. The bookstore I used to spend hours in? Replaced by some overpriced organic grocery store.
Yeah, I'll give you that. It's definitely changing the character of the place. But like, if the neighborhood hadn't improved, would we even want to stay here? I mean, be honest.
I guess that's fair, but it's not just about us, you know? What about the people who've lived here for decades? The families who built this community? They're being pushed out because some developers decided this area is the next hotspot.
I hear you, but isn't that just, I don't know, how cities evolve? Like, if those long-term residents had been able to buy property back then, they'd be sitting on a gold mine right now.
Okay, but that's a huge if. Most people weren't in a position to buy, and now they're basically being forced to leave their own neighborhood. That doesn't sit right with me.
No, you're right. It doesn't sit right with me either, actually. I think if the city had put some protections in place earlier, like rent control or affordable housing requirements, we wouldn't be in this mess.
Exactly. That's what frustrates me. It's not like gentrification is this unstoppable force of nature. Policies could have slowed it down or made it more equitable.
True, though I gotta say, I do appreciate being able to walk home at night without looking over my shoulder constantly. That's gotta count for something, right?
Of course it counts. I'm not saying everything about it is bad. I just think there's this narrative that it's all good or all bad, when really it's complicated. Like, yeah, new businesses are great, but not if they price out everyone who made the neighborhood worth investing in the first place.
That's a good point. It's like if the original community had benefited from these improvements instead of being displaced by them, it'd be a totally different story.
Right. Like, imagine if those longtime residents could have opened businesses or gotten help with property taxes so they didn't have to sell. Then everybody wins.
Yeah, I'd be way more on board with the changes if it felt less like replacement and more like, I don't know, actual improvement for everyone.
Exactly. But instead, it's basically just shifting who lives here based on who can afford it. And that's where it gets ethically murky for me.
For sure. I mean, I'm benefiting from it in some ways, and that's weird to think about. Like, I'm part of the problem just by being here and paying these prices.
We all are, in a way. But at least we're talking about it, you know? Most people just pretend it's not happening or that it's no big deal.
Yeah, awareness is the first step, I guess. Though I still don't know what the solution is.
Me neither. But something's gotta give because this isn't sustainable.
Okay, so that was pretty intense. What stood out to you?
Honestly, how neither of them had a clear answer. They both see the pros and cons, but there's no easy fix.
Right, and I think that's what makes conversations like this so tricky in English. You're not just stating facts, you're weighing perspectives, acknowledging nuance.
Exactly. And did you catch how Blake used that mixed conditional? If those long-term residents had been able to buy property back then, they'd be sitting on a gold mine right now.
Yeah, that's a classic past condition with a present result. Super useful when you're talking about how past decisions affect the current situation.
And Kendall's point about policies, if the city had put protections in place earlier, we wouldn't be in this mess. Same structure. It shows regret about something that didn't happen.
Also, I loved how they used phrases like, at what cost, and that doesn't sit right with me. Those are the kinds of expressions that make you sound fluent.
For sure. It's not just about vocabulary, it's about how you frame your thoughts.
All right, should we move on to the next one?
Yeah, let's do it. So this next conversation is completely different in tone. It's two friends, and one of them is basically stuck in a rut.
Yeah, not doing much with his life, partying a lot, avoiding responsibilities, you know the type.
And his friend is trying to give him a reality check, some tough love. There's a lot of idioms and sayings in this one.
American expressions that you'd hear all the time, but might not find in textbooks. We'll break this down after you listen.
This one's really relatable, honestly. Let's hear it.
Dude, can we talk for a sec?
Yeah, what's up?
It's just, I don't know really how to say this without sounding like a jerk, but I'm worried about you, man. Worried about what? Come on, Casey. You've been spinning your wheels for like 2 years now. You're not working. You're not in school. What's the plan here? I mean, I'm figuring it out. It's not like I'm sitting around doing nothing. Aren't you, though? Every time I see you, you're either hungover or about to go out. When's the last time you actually applied for a job or looked into going back to school? I don't know, man. I've been busy. Busy doing what? Look, I get it. Life's hard, and nobody has it all figured out. But you can't keep kicking the can down the road forever. Why are you on my case about this? I'm fine. You're not fine, dude. You're barely scraping by. You're crashing on your brother's couch because you can't afford rent. That's not fine. Wow. Okay. Thanks for the reminder. I'm not trying to rub salt in the wound. I'm trying to wake you up. You're better than this. You've got potential, but you're pissing it away.
You don't think I know that? You think I'm happy with where I am?
Then do something about it. You keep saying you're going to get your act together, but talk is cheap. At some point, you got to walk the walk.
It's not that simple, Jordan.
I know it's not simple, but nothing worth doing ever is. You're acting like you've got all the time in the world, but time flies whether you're having fun or not.
So what? You want me to just snap my fingers and suddenly have my life together?
No, but you could start small. Apply for one job this week. Look into community college. Just do something instead of sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. You think I'm feeling sorry for myself? Honestly, yeah, a little bit. And I get it, you've had a rough couple of years. But at some point, you gotta stop making excuses and start making moves. That's easy for you to say. You've got a job, your own place. And you think that just fell into my lap? I busted my ass to get here. I worked 2 jobs while going to school. It sucked, but I did it because I didn't want to be stuck in the same place 5 years down the line. Good for you. Don't do that. Don't shut down on me. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because I care about you, man. You're my best friend, and it kills me to watch you throw your life away. I'm not throwing my life away. Then prove it. Because right now, you're all bark and no bite. You talk about what you're gonna do, but you never follow through. All right, I hear you. Do you, though? Because I've had this conversation with you before, and nothing changes. What do you want me to say? I don't want you to say anything. I want you to do something. Actions speak louder than words, dude. Okay, so what do you suggest? Start by cutting back on the partying. You can't chase 2 rabbits at once. Either you're serious about getting your life on track, or you're not. That's not fair. I'm allowed to have fun. Of course you are, but there's a difference between having fun and using it as an escape. You're running from your problems instead of facing them head on. Maybe you're right. I know I'm right. Look, I'm not saying you need to have everything figured out tomorrow, but you gotta start somewhere, and the clock's ticking. You're not getting any younger. Yeah, I know. So what's it gonna be? Are you gonna keep making excuses, or are you gonna step up? I'll step up. I will. Good. Because you've got too much going for you to waste it. And I'll help you, whatever you need. But you gotta meet me halfway. I appreciate that, man. Really. That's what friends are for. Now, let's get you back on track before it's too late.
Wow. Jordan really didn't hold back, did he?
Nah, he went straight for the tough love approach. But that's what friends do sometimes. They tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Exactly. And there were so many great expressions in there. Like when Jordan said Casey was spinning his wheels, that's such a visual way to say someone's putting in effort, but not actually going anywhere.
Right, like a car stuck in mud. And kicking the can down the road, that's another classic. It means you're postponing dealing with something instead of facing it now.
I loved talk is cheap. That's one you hear all the time. It basically means words don't mean anything without action to back them up.
And the follow-up, walk the walk, that's the action part. If you talk the talk but don't walk the walk, you're all words, no substance.
Oh, and all bark and no bite. That's another way of saying the same thing. Someone who makes threats or promises but never follows through.
What about busted my ass? That's pretty informal, but you hear it a lot. It just means working really, really hard.
Yeah, and the clock's ticking is a great way to remind someone that time's running out. It adds urgency without being too aggressive.
And that line about can't chase 2 rabbits at once, I love that one. You can't pursue 2 conflicting goals and expect to catch either one.
These are the kind of sayings that make you sound like a native speaker. They add color to your language.
For sure. All right, should we move to the next conversation?
Yes. So this one's about influencers, whether it's a real job, if some are irresponsible, if they should earn more than doctors or teachers. It's definitely a hot-button topic.
Yeah, people have strong opinions on this one. You'll hear 2 friends debating different sides of it.
And there's some great vocabulary around social media, ethics, and modern work culture.
Let's hear what they have to say.
Okay, so I saw this video yesterday where an influencer was complaining about how hard her job is, and the comments were brutal.
I mean, can you blame people? It's hard to feel sympathy when someone's getting paid thousands to post pictures of their breakfast.
But that's kind of dismissive, don't you think? Being an influencer is a real job. They're basically running their own business.
Sure, but is it really comparable to someone who spent years in med school or is working 60-hour weeks as a teacher? I don't think so.
I'm not saying it's the same, but it does require skills. You need to understand marketing, branding, content creation, audience engagement. It's not just taking selfies.
Okay, fair point. But here's what bothers me. Some of these influencers are so irresponsible. They'll promote anything for a paycheck without thinking about the impact.
You're not wrong about that. I've seen influencers pushing sketchy products or giving terrible advice just because they got a sponsorship deal.
Exactly. And their followers, especially younger ones, take what they say as gospel. That's dangerous.
True, but that's an issue of regulation and ethics, not whether influencing is a legitimate career. Bad doctors exist too, but we don't say medicine isn't a real profession.
I guess, but the barrier to entry is so different. Anyone with a phone can become an influencer. You can't just decide to be a surgeon one day.
That's actually why it's so competitive. Sure, anyone can try, but very few actually make it. For every influencer making millions, there are thousands barely scraping by.
Still, when someone is making millions for what looks like minimal effort, it feels wrong. Teachers are shaping minds and making pennies.
I get the frustration, but shouldn't we be mad at the system that undervalues teachers, not at influencers for capitalizing on market demand?
Maybe, but influencers are part of that problem. They're perpetuating this culture where fame and image matter more than substance.
Or maybe they're just adapting to the world we live in. Social media isn't going anywhere, and people who figure out how to make a living from it are just being smart.
I don't know, it feels like we're rewarding the wrong things as a society.
That's fair, but I think there's room for both. Influencers can exist, and teachers can be paid more. Those aren't mutually exclusive.
In theory, sure, but when a 20-year-old is buying a mansion from sponsorship deals while teachers are buying school supplies out of pocket, something feels broken.
I can't argue with that. The wealth gap is insane.
Right? And that's my issue. Not that influencing exists, but what it says about our priorities.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's complicated.
Everything is these days.
That was an interesting one. I think they both made valid points.
Yeah, it's one of those debates where there's no clear right answer. Personally, I think influencing is a legitimate career, but the income disparity compared to essential workers is pretty wild.
I agree. Like Morgan said, it's not really about influencers themselves. It's more about what we value as a society. The fact that someone can make more promoting skincare products than a nurse saving lives does feel off.
Right, but at the same time, they're operating in a market economy. If brands are willing to pay those rates because it drives sales, that's just capitalism at work.
True, and not all influencers are irresponsible. Some use their platforms to raise awareness about important issues or promote small businesses. It's really about how they use that influence.
Exactly. It's the individual, not the profession itself. What do you guys think? We'd love to hear your take on this. Are influencers providing real value, or is it all just smoke and mirrors?
Yeah, drop your thoughts in the comments. We actually read those, and it's always interesting to see different perspectives. And, well, I think that's a wrap for today.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground. Gentrification, tough love between friends, and the whole influencer debate.
Hopefully you picked up some useful expressions and vocabulary along the way.
And remember, the best way to get comfortable with this kind of advanced English is to just expose yourself to it regularly. Listen to podcasts, watch shows, have conversations, even if they're challenging at first.
Exactly. You've got this.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
Yeah, it was a blast. Max, Mia, thanks for having us on the show.
Catch you all next time.
Bye, everyone.